Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. Champions League football is back. I can't wait. Red Bull Arena is a familiar place for Manchester City fans. This is the third Champions League campaign in a row where we've had to face RB Leipzig and go away to the Red Bull Arena. Last season we lost, and we've lost there. Prior to that we drew, I think, previously as well. So we've had a bit of a rough time going away at the Red Bull Arena to face RB Leipzig. But ultimately this is a time that we don't want to focus on this game as an individual game, but more in the grand scheme of things. Because I know if we beat RB Leipzig, or draw, or lose, whatever the result, it doesn't matter too much in the group stage. Because there's plenty of teams we can beat and turn it around. I fully expect City to qualify regardless of the result tomorrow night against RB Leipzig. But what I mean in terms of the grand scheme of things is 2 losses prior. Wolves and Newcastle, not great. And then you've got Arsenal, the game after RB Leipzig, which makes this game a game to stop the rot. We have to defeat RB Leipzig, I think, because that will bode well. Going into the Arsenal game, we can go away to the Emirates with a bit of a spring in our step, add some confidence back into our game, an injection of confidence that's very much needed. We can't afford to go 1-0 down. Before I go any further, I will be doing a watch-along for this tomorrow night, so join me for that one if you haven't joined me for a watch-along already. Change your setup, do something different. If there is a watch-along you usually prefer, give me a try. Give it a whirl. You might have a good time. I have a good feeling you will. Lots of others have started joining me lately, so it is good to see the numbers growing on the channel, in particular during the watch-alongs, which is great. So join me if you haven't already. It's going to be good. But bit of housekeeping news to start with. In terms of injuries, RB Leipzig are riddled with them. They are struggling right now, and that's why I feel quite confident going into this game. Just to give you the names, Dani Olmo, a name familiar to anyone who's been watching the transfer updates that I was doing throughout the summer. City were very interested in Dani Olmo, a key figure to their midfield, an incredibly talented player who won't be playing against us, thankfully. Bichiabu, Ben Henriks, who picked up a hip injury at the weekend against Bayern Munich, where they drew 2-2 in that game. Kevin Campbell also went off injured, and Willie Orban also injured. In terms of City, no new injuries, but 2 players are back training. Bernardo Silva's back. John Stones. That's huge. I can't imagine either of those playing tomorrow night. In truth, I don't think it's the time to throw them in. But maybe get 20 minutes under their belt, a bit of match preparation, bit of match fitness and that sharpness, getting that up to speed, ready for Arsenal. Of course, Rodri can play in these 2 games, in this one game, against RB Leipzig, which I think he will do, sitting back in defensive midfield. The issue with not playing Rodri would be, of course, not playing against Wolves, not playing against Newcastle. You don't play against RB Leipzig, and then obviously you can't play against Arsenal. That's 4 games without Rodri, which would therefore mean match fitness. You know, that 5th game after the international break, it could be a long, long time before Rodri plays in a Manchester City shirt, in which he's going to be lacking match sharpness and match fitness himself. So I think this is a good game to get him back in. The downside to playing Rodri is if we play incredibly well again and win the game comfortably with Rodri in the midfield, it'll further highlight his necessity, the importance that Rodri has on this team, which is an issue because we don't have him against Arsenal. So it might highlight the inefficiencies that we have in midfield when Rodri isn't playing, because we've lost 5 games out of the last 15 games where Rodri didn't play. So if that doesn't indicate his importance, I don't know what does. But tomorrow, if we go to the Red Bull Arena with Rodri in midfield, play really well, it'll only further highlight how good he is and how important he is to the team. So there's actually a negative to him playing, and playing well almost. If you really want to nitpick, I'm being a little bit psychological there and overthinking it potentially, but ultimately it could be a player that we need to be thoughtful of, conscious of his performance in terms of maybe playing for 60 minutes and then bring on other players. If the game's already won in particular, bring on other players to lift their confidence and hope that the momentum of the performance doesn't dip significantly just because Rodri's gone off as a substitute. It's hard to say. The circumstances of the game might dictate how many minutes Rodri gets, of course, but it will be interesting. I am definitely going to start him. The one thing we can't do is afford to go 1-0 down. We just cannot afford to go 1-0 down anymore, because I think it was highlighted against Wolves, the importance of going 1-0 up against teams like this. RB Leipzig are definitely going to play a very narrow block against Manchester City, similar to how Newcastle did, similar to how Wolves did. And the issue with going 1-0 down is there is zero incentive for the opposition to come out of their shape, to break their lines, change the formation, and once in a while attack. Instead, they just camp all in front of the edge of the area, two banks of defenders right in front of the edge of the area, very narrow as well, really forcing us wide and almost impossible to break through centrally. Instead, you go 1-0 up, you can knock it back to Ederson, play it around a little bit more. And at the back, you can dangle the carrot a little bit for the opposition. You're 1-0 up, they need to come out. They've got, if they don't want to lose the game, at least get a point, they need to go and get a goal. It really is that simple. And out they come, drawing them out and playing in our half a little bit, creating bigger gaps behind them, and all the spaces will start to reveal themselves. Alvarez will start finding space in pockets. Foden can start inverting and finding space in those pockets. But instead, lately, going 1-0 down, we're having to play in their half using Diaz and Akanji as a springboard for our attacks, because they had so many touches against Wolves and Ederson only had 18, where in previous games where we have gone 1-0 up, he's had 30, sometimes 40 touches, which is almost double what Erling Haaland gets as a goalkeeper, which is incredible and only highlights how important Ederson's role is going forward, which is something 10 years ago you'd be considered insane saying something like that. A goalkeeper's vitally important for how we play going forward. It's very, very true. Ederson's vital for this team. But so much more so when we go 1-0 up. If we can do that, 1-0 up, we can start dictating the play and pass them to death and just keep it relaxed, play it around at the back a little bit, lure them out and go 2-3-0 up potentially. But we've got to avoid going 1-0 down. I think that's the key to tomorrow's game and going forward, really. It's killing us. It really is. In terms of my predicted starting 11, I've gone with Ederson, Walker, Akanji and Diaz and Gvardiol across the back line. I thought Ake struggled against Wolves. The fact that Gvardiol didn't play at all was a little bit surprising. Not to get any minutes, but surely an indication that he's going to play in this particular game against RB Leipzig, going away to RB Leipzig, his former club, of course, because in the repeat fixture last season where we went to RB Leipzig, he towered above Ruben Diaz from a corner, an absolutely bullet header right into the bottom corner against City. So that won't be happening tomorrow, which is pretty good news because he's on our team. If you can't beat him, buy him, and that's the best way. Rodri, I think he will sit in front of the back four. This is the only debate, really, in the starting 11. I think the rest of the team has kind of picked itself. I can't see any other changes being made. It's just Núñez or Kovacic, really. I think it's a flip of a coin. His performance against Wolves was way below his previous standards. Kovacic, Núñez was subbed off at half-time, which is why I've picked Núñez, because he's probably got a bit more match fitness. He's fresher, had less strain on the legs in the previous games, with fewer minutes to his name, and as a result I've picked Núñez. I don't think he played that badly in the first half, whereas Kovacic was having a real mare of a game. He kept giving it away, really struggled, and I don't think it's a case of being punished therefore for him to not play in this game. I just think Núñez hasn't done that much wrong, and he did look lively in the first half. He nearly got himself an assist against Wolves thanks to a bit of good defending from Dawson to prevent a tap-in for Erling Haaland. That was in like the first 15 minutes. Bit more of that from Núñez, who looked lively. I think he's a good option to have alongside Rodri. But he's the only one that I'm uncertain about, whether it could be Kovacic or Núñez. As for the rest of the team in front of them, I've gone for Julian Alvarez. Foden on the right. This is a game for Foden. He really needs to grab this game by the scruff of the neck, because the last two games, in particular against Wolves, really, he was so anonymous against Wolves and very little impact on the game. Barely said his name. When I did, it was simple passes. He didn't seem brave enough to take on a player. He didn't seem like he really knew what his role was either. He was drifting everywhere to the point where I was like, are you an inverted winger or are you free roaming alongside Alvarez? I think he will do that inverted winger role again, allowing Kyle Walker to overlap him, which is a familiar thing we've seen this season. And you just hope we go 1-0 up, really. On the other side, Doku, I think he deserves another chance. I think he had a mixed game against Wolves. Everything came through him. You want to see that happen again. The fact that Henriks is not playing for RB Leipzig, which therefore means Klosterman's going to come in at right back, and he can be exposed. Doku can do Klosterman. I think he can really rinse him. Take him to the cleaners, Doku. Take him to the cleaners and don't even get it dry cleaned, mate. Just get it absolutely rinsed. Get it rinsed. And I think he can do bits all around this player. So Hopefully Doku can expose their back four a little bit and get some chances for Erling Haaland, who have picked up top. So that's my predicted starting 11. In terms of RB Leipzig, they are reducing the Farmers League image, I think. Borussia Dortmund, RB Leipzig, they're taking points off Bayern Munich quite frequently now. They beat them in their German Super Cup at the start of the season, emphatically, thanks to a Dani Olmo hat-trick, as well as 2-2 draw at the weekend against Bayern Munich. They did go 2-0 up, thanks to an Openda goal. I can't remember who scored the others, but I do remember Harry Kane and Leroy Sané turned it round for Bayern Munich in the second half. We can't afford to go 1-0 down or 2-0 down. God, can't afford that against RB Leipzig. But yeah, since Marco Rose's return, they've lost 6 in the last 30 Bundesliga matches, which is an indication that they are a genuine title threat. I still think Bayern Munich are going to go and win it because they have the class and the know-how, the ability and the setup to do it. It's just RB Leipzig, they're closing that gap, so they're a team to take very, very seriously. What they played against Bayern Munich was interesting because they played a 4-2-2-2. And I think they're going to do the same because it suits playing against City. That narrow block that I spoke about against Wolves, it was a little less narrow than 4-2-2-2, and so was Newcastle. They did have wing-backs operating as a bit of a wide threat, but it was still ultimately narrow in the midfield. The forwards were tucking back, whereas RB Leipzig had a flat back four with a complete block, a column of players of 2-2-2 against Bayern Munich, and I think they'll do that again. The issue for that would be if you play Foden, tucking him inside, does that bode well for City? Will that actually work in our favour if they're already playing so narrow? Tucking a player inside narrows our attack, whereas keeping Doku on the right and keeping Foden pinned on the right wing and not telling Kyle Walker to overlap, instead, keep them on the wings, keep our wingers wide. I think we can stretch them, pull their RB Leipzig midfield apart, stretch them, use the width of the pitch. Because lately we've been very lopsided in attack. This formation was working. We got 6 out of 6 wins thanks to that. But since Newcastle and Wolves, this formation's not worked. And it seems to have been quickly identified by Eddie Howe and Gary O'Neill of Wolves have both used tactics that have killed this tactic. They've used a tactic that's suppressed us and stopped us creating chances, clear-cut chances, to the point where we've been resorting to long shots outside of the box. Of course, our equaliser against Wolves came from a free kick outside the box, and at the end we were seeing Akanji shooting, Rico Lewis shooting from outside the box. So we've got to stretch them. I think that'll be the key. I hope that there's a tactic, a trick under Pep Guardiola's sleeve that he can utilise to really pull this RB Leipzig team apart. But they've got some quality players, albeit injuries are still riddled throughout. They've got Timo Werner back, so I'm not sure where he would fit in a 4-2-2-2 system because obviously he's much better playing wide, being a threat. We've got Kyle Walker to nullify Timo Werner on any potential counter-attacks that they offer. But where does Werner fit into a 4-2-2-2? Because he does tend to play out wide. Xavi Simons is a player we need to be mindful of. Him alongside Dani Olmo would have been a horrible midfield to go up against. Thankfully, Dani Olmo's injured. And Poulsen and Openda up top is likely to be their front two. Openda scored at the weekend, so there's a genuine threat up front from RB Leipzig. In terms of their predicted starting 11, I've gone for Blaswich in goal. Klosterman is right back in Ben Henrik's absence. Simakan, Lukbar and Raum is completing the rest of the back four. Schlager and Seivold. Campbell is out with a hip injury, so Seivold's likely to be popped into the front two in front of the back four. In front of those front two would be Xavi Simons and Emil Forsberg, and Yusuf Poulsen and Luis Openda up front is my predicted starting 11. My predicted result is 3-1 City. I think we're going to go, hopefully, we've got to get a lead. Just get a lead. I think we'll go 2-0 up. I think RB Leipzig might pull one back in the second half and start attacking. And then I'm predicting something on the counter-attack from City to complete the 3-1 victory. We'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping Erling Haaland can find his shooting boots and get a goal to his name. Because we need to breathe confidence into our game again so we can take that confidence into the Arsenal game and take them up, go toe-to-toe with Arsenal, who are feeling it right now. I think they're going to have a big spring in their step, knowing that they beat Bournemouth 4-0 at the weekend and we drop points. It's tough, but I think we're going to do it. Before I go, I did want to mention a big amount of respect due to Franny Lee. He's joined plenty of City players in the sky blue afterlife, which is really sad news to see Franny Lee pass away recently. He's someone I've met numerous times. I did go to school with his two sons. Nice guys, met Franny Lee numerous times, always up for a laugh, seemed like a really top bloke, really good guy. Of course, he was chairman for a good period of time at Manchester City. 148 goals in 330 appearances for Manchester City makes him a true, genuine Manchester City legend. Obviously a bit before my time in terms of a player, but I did hear plenty of stories about him. There was a moment I've seen, you can YouTube it as well. Just type in Franny Lee dive on YouTube and you'll see him emulating George Best's dive, because George Best was on the floor rolling around and Franny Lee does a pretend dive, similar to how Van Gaal did on the touchline for United as manager, if you remember that, where he's pretending that George Best dives. That shows the character that he was, full of life, full of character. And then he had a bit between his teeth at times, and he was a fighter, quite literally. So another thing to YouTube would be Franny Lee versus Norman Hunter. This was when Franny Lee played for Derby County, of course, but they both got sent off the pitch. And while those two players were walking off the pitch, they did left hook, right hook, left hook, right hook. You would never see anything like it in your life. But an indication of the character, the fighter that he was, and an amazing footballer. And it's really sad that he's passed away. So rest in peace, Franny Lee, and my thoughts are with his family, of course, and hopefully we can do the business on the pitch and do something for Franny Lee, who'll no doubt be watching Manchester City. But yeah, that's my preview for RB Leipzig. Come and join me for the watch along, please do. It'll be a good laugh. I will be doing the watch along tomorrow. So get your thoughts in, get your predictions in the comments below. I really want to hear them. Like and subscribe. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now. Holding up Silva.